There's nothing more exciting in IDP than a 3-down linebacker wearing a green dot and having a 16% tackle rate. But you might be asking yourself, who are and when do you target those linebackers in your drafts? The Green Dot King, Mr. Mike Woellert, and I are here to break down all of the linebackers you need to know in 2025 and possibly beyond. If you're looking for upside, we got you. If you're looking for value, we've got you. And if you're looking for breakouts, oh yeah, we've got those covered too on this episode of the IDP After Show.
This is the IDP After Show.
I could not think of a better way to end the potting season before our weekly previews start next week than to talk to the position that truly drives all of IDP. That, of course, is the linebackers. And who better to talk those linebackers with than someone who loves Pearl Jam, the original Crow movie better than the remake, and has a sick obsession with little green stickers. That's right, none other than Mr. Mike Woellert. Mike, how you doing?
Hey, man. How you doing, Jeff? Not too bad. Yeah, those green stickers are quite important.
Especially this time of year, for sure. Everyone's chasing them. Everyone's looking for them. What's your top 2 Pearl Jam songs?
Oh, God. Well, Black is number 1, without a shadow of a doubt. It's Black. And I go back and forth. I mean, I really like Jeremy. It was pretty... I just realized a few years ago that it's actual based off of a real thing. It's like a real kid. So that was kind of freaky. But probably I'd have to say Black and Jeremy. 10 is like the perfect album. You can,
yeah,
it's a no skip album.
Those are rare. So when you find a no skip album like that, that's definitely the way to go. So, all right, well, we'll peel back the layers there. So last week, Mike, you joined John Macri and you guys did the Lord's work, busting out an over 2-hour pod, going team by team, breaking down the linebackers to know for literally every single team in the NFL. So if you haven't given that a listen to yet, make sure you do that in the near future. This episode is going to be a little bit different. In this episode, we're going to, instead of going team by team, we're going to actually take a look at your linebacker tier article. And this is really a labor of love. This is an organism that's constantly growing, changing. Every time Schefter breaks a news article about somebody signing, getting waived, it just kind of changes and evolves. So as we were kind of talking about these linebackers, Mike, I kind of wanted to ask you, do you feel that when doing rankings like this, do you feel that rankings or tiers is a better approach for you to build your roster?
I think I like tiers a little better because, I mean, rankings, it's so hard to just get rankings perfect in an order. When you do tiers, at least you can say, okay, here comes a tier break. These guys are gone. Here's a tier break. I can maybe focus somewhere else. Or I know when I get into this tier break, I'm focusing on maybe a couple of players within a tier. So I kind of like tiers a little bit more, but it's grouping them that's a little difficult. I know with some tiers I've got you got many players, but I think that's just kind of the way things go. I mean, with the rankings, it's impossible to be precise. So that's kind of why I like taking those projections and kind of grouping them into tiers. So, I mean, you see a projection, but you might not see, you might see one guy near the top of the projections, but I've got him in another tier, maybe not near the top. But with projections, you're kind of dealing with a median or a raw projection, and it may not necessarily be a rank, and I might like somebody better, even though I might have them projected higher. But I know it sometimes doesn't make sense, but that's just kind of how my mind works. And nowadays it's always just with IDP and just with everything, I think it's always really about getting your guys. If you like somebody, go draft that person. So, but that's kind of the way I approach, tiers, and kind of grouping them together.
And we know that ranking can be a really dangerous game because someone out there is going to say something like, you've got this player too low.
Yeah.
I've got him ranked. You've got him ranked 18th. I've got him 14th. And when you look at your season long projections, that's like literally the difference of 3 or 4 tackles over the course of the season. So,
yeah, it's very minimal. It's like you have somebody ranked number 2, or you have someone ranked number 4, and well, I got him ranked number 2. Why do you hate this guy? I'm like, dude, I got him at number 4.
He's still a LB1 or a DL1.
It's still a good player. I don't hate it. I don't hate him.
Yeah. Anytime you put a number by a player, it's a dangerous
Yeah,
game. So
yeah, really. Yeah, it really is.
So we're going to hit up some of the article tonight here in this episode. But if you want to, you're more than welcome to head over to the idpshow.com. There you can read the full article. It's one of the free articles that you do for the site, and it's well worth the read. It's like I mentioned before, it's constantly changing. Like literally minutes before we started the show, we were tweaking a couple of them and making sure we had all the tiers correct and things like that. So what we're going to do tonight, we're going to dive into each of these. We're going to pick your brain a little bit, Mike, about players in those tiers, why they're there, why other players aren't, and just kind of go from there. So enough of that banter. We're going to dive into tier one. Tier one actually has 13 different linebackers that make up this tier one. So if you're playing in a 12-team league and there's 13 LB1s, you're probably in a good spot. So before we go here, Mike, are these, I know they're in a tier, but is this how you have them ranked, or are they just a pool of players? So
kind of like a pool of players. I mean,
okay.
It's pretty close to how I probably have them ranked, but these aren't necessarily rankings, but it's the pool of players. I mean, I think my LB1 for the season is Roquan. But yeah, it's just kind of the pool of players. And with tier one, it's kind of I guess you can say the elite of the elite, but there's a few guys that are in this tier that definitely would not have been, and that's Edgerrin Cooper and Jack Campbell. This tier are guys that I consider not only the elite of the elite, but guys that if I'm in kind of a mixed league, I don't mind reaching for sooner than I would. So typically in a mixed league, rounds 1 through 8. I'll concentrate more on the offense. I'll build my offense, and then, maybe then focus on the defense round 9, round 10 or later. But if I feel like, okay, I don't really like anybody at running back or wide receiver, you know what? I'm just going to reach on the best linebacker. So these are the guys that I guess I don't mind reaching for earlier than I normally would.
Okay. Good segue there. And so I just don't want to get you in trouble by mentioning a name sooner than somebody else, because I know how it is out in the street sometimes. So
yeah,
in tier one, we have Roquan Smith, Zaire Franklin, Ernest Jones, TJ Edwards, Daiyan Henley, Zack Baun, Terrel Bernard, Edgerrin Cooper, Jack Campbell, Jamien Sherwood, Robert Spillane, Oluokun, and of course, Carson Schwesinger. I'm surprised he's not in a tier all of his own, but
well, I don't want to come off as biased, so I don't want to come off looking as a homer, so kind of had to put him in with the rest of the guys, but as we've joked around, I've got him projected for about 378 tackles, so he really is in a tier in his own.
So if you have any rookie of the year, defensive rookie of the year bets placed, he's definitely the smart money at this point, huh?
Plus 3,000, still plus 3,000.
So you kind of alluded to it already, Mike, about these guys being the elite of the elite.
Mm-hmm.
Are you comfortable with any one of these linebackers being your LB1 on your fantasy teams this season?
Yeah, I think the only one that I might not be is Robert Spillane, but most of the guys within this tier have eclipsed, the 150 tackle mark. So they're pretty much set in stone for 140, 150 tackles for the most part. Spillane, I think, is the one that if you asked me, hey, if you got to take one of these and put him into tier 2 or lower him, it's probably Robert Spillane. And it's more so on the scheme. I think he's leaving kind of a more tackle friendly scheme from Vegas to New England, where they run maybe a little bit more man coverage, which kind of tends to lower the floor a little bit. But I still think Spillane is good for about 100, 135 tackles. He's a 3-down guy. He's calling the plays, running the dot, as we say. So, I mean, he's got a 3-down role. So, he's on the field. He's going to produce. But he's the only one probably. If I were going to remove somebody from this tier, it'd probably be him. I might move him down to tier 2.
So you kind of teased it out, and I know many of our listeners already know the green dot. So for those of us that are on the fence, unquestioning, kind of not knowing for sure, what does that green dot really mean, Mike, when you say they wear the green dot?
It means he's got a 3-down role. He's going to be on the field for 100% of the snaps, which obviously is good for any fantasy player. So you want your guy on the field, and if he's not on the field, he can't get points. He can't get stats. So he's not going to score you any points. So the green dot doesn't necessarily equal production. It equals snaps, which equals opportunity, which can lead to production. But it just so happens a lot of the guys usually at the top of the fantasy scoring are wearing the dot. But that's probably the most important thing is that they're wearing the dot. They're calling the plays. So they're not leaving the field.
And obviously all of these players in your elite tier are green dot. Rocking the green dot, all in the place for the defense.
Yeah, with the exception, I think, of Cooper. All of them are wearing the dot.
Okay. So when I first was going through, kind of prepping for the show, one name that kind of stood out to me on this list is Terrel Bernard.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of the name that was like, So sell me on him. Like, why is what do you make? Why is Bernard in your elite tier of linebackers?
Well, in his first year of starter, he had 143 tackles. Injuries kind of derailed his season a little bit last year. But when you look at his game log from week 9 on, he averaged over 10 tackles a game and a 14.7% tackle rate. Since becoming a starter, wearing the green dot, he's at a 14% tackle rate, which is pretty much top of the line, almost borderline elite. So when he is on the field, he racks up the tackles. Buffalo's a pretty good scheme. It's a 2 linebacker, nickel heavy defense. So coupled with that, for me, Terrel Bernard is an elite player. I mean, he still finished with over 100, and I think he finished with 107 tackles last season. I think he missed 3 or 4 games, if I'm not mistaken. But he's an elite producer. Like I said, that tackle rate is high up in the 14s. So for me, yes, I have no problem building if I have him as my LB1, I do not have a problem building my lineup around him.
He seems like a linebacker that's probably, outside of the IDPshow.com's rankings, is probably you could get at a little bit better value if you're using other sites, so he's kind of a name maybe that's kind of surprising maybe to some of our listeners that he's like, that's not a name that I would expect to see in tier 1. Yep. Maybe that would have been more of a tier 2 kind of play, but to see him there, I was kind of like, so tell me more, Mike. So, yeah. So, all right. So diving into tier 2, we see a lot of household names that many leagues we've won championships with. 14 players make up this group. Maybe some that surprise a little bit here that they're not in the tier above, and maybe surprising that they're not in the tier below. But you kind of tease this out a little. You're like a psychic friend here. Right?
Nostradamus, as they say.
Tackle-damus here. We got it. So, what separates a tier 1 elite linebacker from a tier 2 for IDP format? Is it tackle volume? You mentioned tackle percentage already. Is it snap count consistency? Is it your own league scoring? So where do you draw the line for tier 1, tier 2 linebackers?
I think it really is just kind of semantics. I mean, tier 2, these are guys that I'm not necessarily going to reach for. So these are the guys that I'm kind of comfortable kind of building my linebacker group around. So if I don't feel like, all right, I think these guys are still going to produce. If I can get 3 or 4 of these guys, I can build a pretty good linebacker room. So not necessarily I'm going to reach for them early, but these guys are weekly starters. They have full-time roles. Still, a lot of these guys have the green dot, so they have 100% snap roll, but then you're falling into some of the guys that have a full-time role, probably 95% of the snaps. So provide a very, very safe tackle floor, very safe tackle rate. Sometimes they can be a little too dependent on some of the bigger plays like Caden Elliss. He was boosted by some sacks last season, kind of. So we don't necessarily can count on those as they high variance year to year. So necessarily may not be able to rely on some of those bigger plays. So that's kind of still why he's maybe bumped down, but still weekly guys you can start targeting in that 9th, 10th round, grab a couple of them, and you still have a pretty solid weekly room, really nice floor, maybe not as high of a ceiling as some of those tier 1 guys, but they can still produce some splash plays, big plays, tackles for loss, some sacks. Those stats that kind of boost your ceiling a little bit. So, but yeah, they still have a full-time role, and do have the green dot in most instances. Like if you look at guys like Bobby Wagner, who is probably going to have to get dragged off the field. Caden, Elliss, Fred Warner, Logan Wilson, Lavonte, Azeez, Singleton, Cashman, Walker, Bolton, Dodson, Sanborn. I mean, all these guys have the green dot. So I think the only one that doesn't, that I think I have in this tier, if I'm looking at it correctly, is maybe Devin Lloyd, which I know is probably also a surprise name that I probably have a little bit higher, but yeah, the schemes and their roles allow for a high tackle volume.
So from what I'm hearing, Mike, from this is kind of like with defensive backs. I don't want to be the fantasy team that reaches for and be the first guy to draft a defensive back. I don't want the Antonio Winfields. I don't want the Hamiltons on my team. I'm okay waiting and fading that position. Are you okay building a team around like 2 or 3 of these guys in your draft where I can like maybe not reach for that elite tier of guys and still be okay with my roster construction?
Yeah, because there's still a history with a lot of these guys. There's a track record of production. I mean, you look at Bobby Wagner. I think his when you look at his stats and when you see a season, I think there's only one season where he's been fewer than maybe 130 tackles. So there is that consistent track record of production. So that's pretty much this tier.
We have our first pair of teammates in a tier right now. We've got Jordyn Brooks and Terrel Dodson here in this tier. Do you ever worry about those players like kind of cannibalizing each other's stats from week to week, or
would I have them on the same? Would I want them on my same team? Maybe not, but even still, when you looked at, when you look at Dodson's tackle rate, when you look at, even when you, like I said, when you look at Dodson's tackle rate, when you look at Brooks's tackle rate, 140 tackles, 19 tackles for loss over the last 2 years. Terrel Dodson, he still had a 12.5% tackle rate. He was passed around a little bit. Him and Ernest Jones were the guys that kind of seemed to be passed around a little bit. So with Dodson, he's finally settled. He is calling the plays, but I think with those two, I think there's enough to go around within Miami's defense that both should be productive.
one name that's kind of surprising to me and maybe to many of the listeners right now is that Fred Warner isn't in that tier 1 ranking, that elite. He's been one of the more consistent linebackers over the last 3 seasons in big 3 scoring. He was linebacker 6 in scoring in 2023, LB 8 last year. Do you see a regression coming for him in 2025, or what's the rationale there?
Well, with scoring, I know with so many different scoring systems, I think I try to look at some of the other scoring systems. So that's why Fred Warner might be a little bit lower. Last season, he finished actually as the LB 18 and kind of a tackle heavy balanced format. And then he finishes an LB 14 if you factor in some TFLs and other stats. I think in 23, he did finish, I think as a 12 or the 11th, but in more tackle friendly, more balance friendly. I think he's only finished in the top 10 maybe twice. So I think with him, he is without a doubt, when you look at it from a real football standpoint, probably one of the best all-around linebackers in football. Consistent producer, has yet to have though that elite tackle season like some of the other guys have. He's kind of hovering around the 130, 135, and he's never really eclipsed that 140. So that's still why I have him in that second tier, maybe not that first tier. But still probably, if I have Fred Warner's my LB1, I'm not crying about it.
Sure.
But he's kind of that name that has yet to have really that elite tackle status or that elite tackle season like some of the others have. But still just a fun fun linebacker to watch.
And I think you kind of nailed it there too. Like if you're drafting him in that elite tier, you're going to need to draft him as a top 12 linebacker. And if his best finish is only like that 11, 12, you're literally drafting him at a ceiling where there's no upside there. You're drafting him for what he needs to produce to be worthy of that pick. Whereas some of these other players you can kind of get some upside with.
Yep.
As long as we're talking about scoring, and I know you kind of mentioned it too with Caden Elliss, knowing your scoring system and seeing how it's such a huge thing because Caden Elliss is such a variant player when it comes to that. Because if you play in like a tackle heavy league, Caden Elliss might kind of be a little bit lower, but if you play in like a sack heavy league or a big play league, he might get a little boost where he gets kind of bumped up a spot or two just because of that big play ability, because that's kind of his role in Atlanta. And it sounds like that's going to be what he's going to be doing this season again, rushing the passer. And then Diablo is going to kind of be that coverage guy. So,
Yep.
Do your rankings impacted at all by injury history, or are you just kind of like,
I used to assume 17 game seasons, but I've since I'm ranking more for snaps, I've kind of adjusted and saying, yeah, I think this guy's going to play X amount of snaps, and my snaps are kind of factor in some injuries. Obviously, some guys I do factor, like Blake Cashman. That factor, his injury history factors in. So if they don't have a long injury history, I probably, I don't factor in as much, but yeah, I'll start to, you kind of factor in this guy might miss a few snaps here and there, might miss a game, might miss a couple of games. So, yes, I will factor in, some injuries, kind of take a look at those 3-year averages, see how their tackle production is going over those 3-year averages, how their tackle rates are for those averages. And, but really a lot of the linebackers are pretty consistent when it comes to production for a year-over-year basis. I know one guy that has been elite but kind of tailed off was, Foyesade Oluokun. He got jerked around. Why? I don't know. I don't know what was going on last year. Found himself coming off in certain situations, but I think that has ended with Anthony Campanile, and I think he is going to have I think his role again is solidified as the green dot. So again, I think he's going to have that 100% role. So with someone like Oluokun, I think you can kind of factor in and realize, okay, he's probably going to go back to that 150, 160 tackle mark. I mean, his absolute floor is probably 140, which is fantastic. So that's kind of how I project. So I do factor in guys are going to get dinged a little bit.
Getting older myself, I know that age is sometimes an injury. Do you worry at all? Like, I see Bobby Wagner on this list. Yep. We see Lavonte David on this list. Is there any hesitation with them being like, with the draft capital needed to acquire one of these guys? Worried about that at all?
Well, those guys, I don't think you're going to start to acquire. I think you're probably going to start selling. You want to sell those guys maybe to a contender, but you look at them and like, okay, they're not showing any signs at all of tailing off. And it's, these guys play 1,000 snaps a season and there's just no sign of tailing off. The one thing that I do actually worry about with Wagner, and this really just kind of comes from more of, I guess you can say, a gut, or does Washington start to limit him this year since they're a Super Bowl contender? Does Wagner's snaps start to get limited a little bit throughout the season? Because usually what happens during the preseason, if the green dot doesn't play in the preseason, it's usually a backup that gets the dot. So the one thing that kind of raised my eye a little bit was, I think it was week 2, Wagner didn't play, but Frankie Luvu did. And he was paired with Kane Medrano, and Luvu wore the dot. So it's like, okay, am I reading into it? Is this kind of a sign of maybe at some point, maybe Wagner might not have a true 3-down role this year? will Luvu have some time, or will Luvu be the guy? So and this is really going off no credible information reporting or anything. I think I remember anecdotally maybe someone saying, maybe the coach or someone saying, yeah, we want to limit him. But when you see something like that, it's just, it may not be something, but I don't think it's nothing, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
Yep.
So just something to note, just kind of something to keep in the back of your mind.
Do you think that Medrano is maybe the heir apparent to Wagner there, or does it just so happen that he played the third preseason game next to Luvu?
I think it just he played that, he played that game. So I think it's tough. He was, I don't remember what round he was drafted. I don't think he was an undrafted free agent, but I think he did end up wearing it at some point during the preseason, whether, when they were both off. So there is some probably comfortability already with him, but no, at this point, it's probably going to be either Luvu or Wagner. I would still think Wagner gets it, but we'll kind of see what happens.
All right. One last question about tier 2, and then we'll move on to tier 3.
Yep.
Who is one player in this tier, Mike, that you feel really comfortable like reaching for, that you're like, I'm putting a circle around this guy's name?
Probably Jack Sanborn with Dallas. Familiar with Eberflus's scheme. They had, familiarity from Chicago. Even with a short sample, he was productive. I think he had a 16% tackle rate. Obviously didn't play many snaps, but when you extrapolate everything, when you look at the stats, he had about a 16% tackle rate. So, and then with Dallas, it does look like he's got a 3-down role. He does have everything that I have seen from Dallas between OTAs, between minicamp, between the preseason, is that he's the one calling the plays. I don't know how Kenneth Murray has this air of invincibility now around him. I don't know how he earned that. I know he's been banged up. I don't know if the time that he was in the practice field, if he was the second coming of Patrick Willis, and they're like, yeah, this is, but I don't feel comfortable with Kenneth Murray at all. I mean, watching the preseason, Maris Leofau, for me, took a leap from what I saw last year to this year in terms of his confidence on the field. So, I mean, if there were 2 full-time linebackers in Dallas, I would guess it's him, Leofau and Sanborn, and Sanborn's been calling the plays and wearing the dot. So I think Sanborn is in for a career year if things hold. So that's who I'd be reaching for from this tier is Sanborn.
As long as we're kind of diving deep here on Dallas and the linebackers, Overshown obviously isn't going to be back until maybe Thanksgiving-ish, week 10, week 11, 12-ish, somewhere in there, maybe at best. And so from reading the tea leaves from you, Mike, it sounds like Murray is going to be the one that's going to be most hit by Overshown coming back over Sanborn.
That's who I would guess. I mean, if Sanborn's calling the plays and Dallas is winning, or they're playing well, I don't get why you'd want to interrupt the continuity of that. Basically the linebacker, whoever is calling the plays, they're the quarterback of the defense. So there's a comfortability here. This guy commands the defense. He has everybody playing in position. Is relaying the plays. So is that something Overshown can do? I don't know. I don't remember him wearing the dot at all last year. I don't know if last year is last year. I don't fall back to last year. So, just because you have a lot of tackles or you're talented, that doesn't necessarily mean you can wear the dot, just because it is, you're relaying information in about 15 seconds before the communication gets shut down at the play clock. And then you've got your pre-snap reads, and there's, some people can do it and some people can't. So I'm surprised Overshown I know he's progressing. I know his rehab is going really well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to him and when he's back. But I know he said during the spring, Thanksgiving, I don't know, maybe earlier. I don't know. But I think it's going to hurt Murray or Leofau before it hurts Sanborn.
Yeah. Well, we know Sanborn can do it because he's a former Badger, so we know those guys can do a lot of things on the field. So got a lot of former Badger linebackers on our list here so far. Got TJ Edwards, got Zach Baun, and now Sanborn. So good to be a Badger on Mike's list. All right, heading into tier 3, we have a lot of solid names on this list, and I think this is kind of where many of our listeners, this is where we question things. Tier 1 names, that makes sense. Tier 2 names, we're pretty familiar with that. Getting into this tier 3, this is where we can really help some teams win some championships, because I feel that this is the tier where there's a lot of variant from last season to this season, a lot of new names, maybe some unfamiliar names with many of our listeners. So this tier has 17 different linebackers in it. So, like a lot of other lists will have like 12 LB1s, 12 LB2s. With this tier ranking, I love this idea of having like a pool of players, because we know that no two linebackers are created equal, but at the same time, we look at these lists and be like, yeah, I'm good pivoting to either of these guys. There's not a significant difference in their situation. So again, if you want to look at the list, tier 3 list, you're welcome to over at the idpshow.com. The website's there. Definitely worth the time. So Mike, looking at your list of players in tier 3, who might have the clearest or maybe the best chance to break into that tier 1 status this season? Who do you like for that?
I mean, there's probably a couple of guys, but I think Christian Roseboom probably has that chance. I know he was on a fade list earlier in the year because he went to a situation where there was Josie Jewell, there was Trevin Wallace, so his role was kind of undefined, was unknown. But as soon as Josie Jewell was released, Christian Roseboom they bestowed him the green dot, so he's got a 3-down role. When you look at his tackle efficiency from last year, he had 135 tackles while he was playing only 70% of the snaps. Now the efficiency is probably going to come down because that typically will be what happens when you play more snaps. His efficiency might come down, but there's certainly some upside there to hit 140, 150 tackles. So Christian Roseboom with that defense and pretty much the tackle share all to himself. I mean, you've got Trevin Wallace probably next to him. I think the only one that is really a competition for tackles is Derek Brown. Because he just swallows up a bunch of tackles. But really, he should have the entire tackle share all to himself. Anybody gets past that defensive line. Plus, I think Carolina also a relatively zone-friendly scheme. So again, he's going to get the tackle numbers pretty good. He gets those zone tackles. So Christian Roseboom, definitely somebody that is starting to kind of gain momentum, but I still think is a good value pick that when you look at it, you're like, wait, what? Really? Roseboom? It's like, yeah, this guy has a 3-down roll 100% of the snaps. So I think, high efficiency tackler, definitely can get into that first tier. I think Nate Landman's another one, but I'm still a little worried about him just because with some of these guys that aren't named Fred Warner, Roquan Smith, Bobby Wagner, they can lose their role at any moment if they're through poor play. These guys aren't set in stone. Nate Landman only a 1-year deal, so he doesn't have very high free agent capital, doesn't necessarily need to play 100% of the snaps. If there's any type of slip up, they could easily go to somebody else. But Landman, somebody that could potentially outperform this tier again as the green dot, 100% of the snaps. So those are kind of the guys that I'm looking at. Cody Barton just seems to be the Terminator. You shoot him, he heals up, and he's back. You can't kill this guy. So everywhere he goes to just seems to have a 3-down roll no matter where he goes to. Not the best linebacker when you look at some of his PFF grades, but just one of those guys, I guess, coaches trust. They trust him to process the information. They trust him to relay the information, get everybody in position pre and post snap. And then whenever the ball is snapped, it seems to be around the ball to make the tackle.
And he's one of those guys that preseason only confirmed what you're saying too, Mike, right? Like he played one series or the dot and then was done for the night. There is nothing that screams LB1 on your team more than that. So,
Yep.
It's kind of funny looking at some of these lists. I know that you were involved in the fast drafts earlier this summer and stuff like that too. And, Dre Greenlaw was a name I found myself picking that 5th, 6th round sometimes. And then if someone would have drafted D Winters in one of those startup or those D up drafts, everyone would have been looking. But when you look at your tiers here, like, Dre Greenlaw and D Winters, they're pretty comparable in players and opportunity this season. Like, D Winters is probably one of those names that probably might be winning some leagues this year.
Yeah. And I love D Winters. I actually got, I love, well, one, kudos to the NFL and their pro product, because it is light years ahead of anything that they've ever done. So I'm glad that they have they got all the preseason, all 22 up. I got a chance to watch, and this kid really took the LB2 job and just ran with it. I know they drafted Nick Martin, third or fourth round, so relatively high draft capital. So I know they liked Martin to potentially take that Dre Greenlaw role, but D Winters really took a hold of it throughout the preseason and really played well throughout the preseason. Kind of gives me a little bit of a Navarro Bowman vibe, obviously. Scrapes with the way he scrapes the field, good sideline to sideline, gets good jumps, but most importantly, sounds like he's going to be that LB2 and get all the steps alongside Fred Warner. With Robert Salah back in, he typically runs a nickel heavy 2 linebacker defense, pretty tackle friendly defense when you look at what he did with the Jets last year between Jamien Sherwood and even Quincy Williams. Each over 120, 130 tackles. And when you look at Jamien Sherwood, first year in that system, 140 tackles, had an LB1 type season. So yeah, D Winters is a guy that you can, I don't know if you can get for free anymore. I know his ADP is probably rising, but when we're talking, when you look at just some people that you don't assume that are just like so IDP focused or nuts like us, when you break out of your Twitter bubble, you're like, D Winters, I've never heard of that. Most people are like, D Winters, really? I've never heard. It's like, no, this guy, he's a definite target. So, and even like, and even going to, I think you mentioned Divine Diablo. I think he's another guy, full-time role, been talked up in Atlanta, grasped the defense really quickly. I noticed just a nickel for most of the preseason. So I think it's good news that he's coming back in more of a 2 linebacker system. You mentioned him. Decent in coverage, that definitely bodes well for him. Converted safety, so definitely does have some of that coverage ability. So, and Atlanta's probably going to have 2 full-time linebackers. So Diablo, I think, is a good one for a nice bounce back system. Nice bounce back after having kind of a 70% role with the Raiders over the last couple of seasons.
Well, we won't talk about the Raiders linebacker situation, but
oh god,
no,
please. I wasn't feeling good last night. I don't want to repeat it last night.
Maybe that's what it was. You had some bad Raiders in your mouth. Diablo signed like a 2-year, $14 million deal too, and that's not like bench money. That's going to follow the money there piece there too.
Yep.
So,
you
kind of teased out a little rookie chatter there with Nick Martin. I see another rookie in this tier, Demetrius Knight Jr.
Yep.
Do we sometimes get too aggressive ranking rookies? I know that we've ad nauseum talked about how we've been burned by rookie linebackers in the past, and it takes, it's a tougher position to make that jump from college to pros, probably because of all of the pre-snap alignment things and everything that they need to take care of. But are you okay with Demetrius Knight here? Obviously you are, you have him in your rankings, but is there any pause with that rookie stigma?
With Demetrius Knight and Carson Schwesinger, there really isn't, just because the Bengals didn't really do anything to address the linebacker situation. Outside of the draft, they did draft Barrett Carter, but they did let Jermaine Pratt go. So who's the veteran? They brought in Oren Burks, who's mostly been a base down LB3, pretty decent in the run, but hasn't done anything too special. So, and just watching what in the preseason, that's exactly how it went during the preseason. Logan Wilson, Demetrius Knight, Oren Burks in their base, and in nickel, Burks was the one coming off the field, and then Logan Wilson and Knight were the ones that came off and got kind of that starter treatment during the preseason. They played a couple of series and then they were off the field. So, those two with Schwesinger and Knight, they landed in some really good spots with real clear paths to snaps. Whereas in the past, like last year with Edgerrin Cooper, we were like, oh, this guy's got a 3-down roll. Well, no, Isaiah McDuffie is probably still going to get some play. So I think with those two, I think those are the two with the really clear path to snaps.
one rookie that we haven't mentioned yet, ironically, was actually the first linebacker drafted.
Yep.
Campbell, he's going to show up in tier 4 here, but why is it? Obviously, Nakobe Dean's not going to start the season. He's probably going to have a path to snaps. Is it his role in the defense? Is it why is Campbell not a more highly ranked player for you?
Well, because basically the first 6 weeks probably are all his, but Nakobe Dean is coming back, and that's going to eat into his snaps, or at least you're going to assume that he's going to be eating into his snaps. Nakobe Dean is looked at as a leader, so he's not losing his job. He is going to come back. He is going to play. And then what will Jihad Campbell's role be? How many snaps is he going to play? Where is he going to play? So for those first 6 weeks, he looks to be the linebacker 2 opposite Baun. But it's just when Dean comes back, we don't know what's going to happen. And anybody who says they know, I think is lying. I'm not going to pretend to know. I'm not going to pretend to know what Vic Fangio has in store. I'm not going to pretend what the Eagles have in store. I just know that Nakobe Dean is looked at as a leader. He's called the plays. He's looked at as a captain. And I think even Vic Fangio likes him. So that's why that is the main reason why he's not higher, is just because when Dean comes back, we just don't know what Campbell's role is going to be.
And we should always be turning our lineups over, especially on the IDP side, looking to like cash in on players. So, are you kind of saying like maybe after the 6 weeks selling Campbell high before, maybe Dean comes back, if that's a
redraft? Absolutely. Redraft. Yes. Yeah. Dynasty. No, hold on to him. Campbell is a hold in dynasty, but yes, if it comes to week 4 or 5 and Campbell is producing, like an LB1, he's averaging, 10, 11 points. He has a pretty good average, pretty good production. Absolutely sell high on him if you can.
So obviously Campbell's going to be the one to suffer when Dean comes back. Nothing to worry about with Baun.
I mean, look at Baun just signed a pretty hefty extension. I don't see Baun as any. I don't see any reason why you'd want to take Baun off the field if he's that productive in the defense. So I don't see any real impact to Baun.
Okay, got two last questions here in tier 3. One name that's kind of surprising, maybe to many listeners, is going to be Bobby Okereke is going to be in this tier. Mm-hmm. He was kind of a stalwart a couple seasons ago. Probably gets drafted more by name recognition at this point than actual maybe on the field production. But this seems pretty low for someone. Why Okereke here?
Some yellow-orange flags raised during the preseason. I think it was week 2. Things, things were as normal. It was him and Micah Fadden. Okereke was wearing the dot, and then it was the second series that is what kind of gave me that red, not necessarily red flag, but gave me that little bit of a warning. So in that first series of Okereke, all 7 snaps, it was him and Micah Fadden. McFadden actually came off for a couple of single dime snaps. Second series, though, Okereke was off the field, and it was McFadden who had the dot. Then on the third series, Darius Masau and McFadden were on the field. And then Okereke and Masau were on the field together while Masau had the dot with Okereke on the field. So I don't know if Okereke's role is going to change or, if there's going to be some sort of a 3-man rotation, but that is definitely raising a little bit of an orange flag for me there. I read, I think in Dan Duggan's 53-man projection article on The Athletic, he even said there could be some sort of a rotation between Okereke and Masau and McFadden. So I think there's a little bit of a risk with Okereke as we head into the season. If you've drafted him, I mean, you're not going to drop him, but I don't, those LB1 elite numbers that he had with the Colts in his first year with the Giants may or may not be there. It may not be something. It's definitely not nothing.
who are you reaching for in this one? Like, I know these are tier 3 players. You got all your tier 1, tier 2s. Who's maybe a player in this tier that you're like, you're okay kind of reaching on just a little bit?
Yeah, in tier 3, are we still? We're still in tier 3, right? Yeah, tier 3.
We are.
I'm reaching for D Winters. I like his role. I like his role in the defense. It pained me to write an article about zero linebacker and waiting and not attacking the position, but Servatia Dennis could be an interesting LB2 in Tampa. So he's someone that if you maybe drafted a couple of linebackers and then are waiting on the position, Dennis could be somebody that could be productive within Tampa's defense as that LB2. A couple of guys that I'm probably not paying attention to are fading. Tremaine Edmonds, I think his ceiling was capped in his rookie year, inefficient tackler, and I'm probably staying away from Alex Anzalone this year as well. So I'm not sure. I don't think he's going to have the dot this year. I think Campbell gets it. And then I don't know if he's going to be in some sort of rotation with Derek Barnes. I know he's expressed some dissatisfaction with his current contract. Dan Campbell seems like a guy that doesn't take that. I don't, he's not going to punish you, but it seems like just seems like a team coach, and I don't think he's going to get punished, but you never know. It's like kind of one of those non-punishment punishments where he's rotating. So Alex Anzalone and Tremaine Edmonds in this tier are probably guys that I'm probably not paying too much attention to.
Selfish question here. This is just for my own wanting to know. Tyrese Knight in this tier just because of the knee injury and the other medical at this point, or
Knight looks fine. I think he was cleared, and I think he should be good to go. Like I said, I'm a big fan of the megastar, so I don't necessarily have a problem with Knight either. Even the Seahawks signing Chris Paul to the practice squad, I don't think that really concerns me too much either.
All right, diving into tier 4, we are definitely getting into the IDP weeds here a little bit. Here's 18 more names in this tier of players. Some of the names may be a little surprising. We already kind of teased out. You had Campbell's in this group. We've got some players that Micah McFadden is in this group. There's a lot of linebacker 2s on this team or in this tier, Mike. Are there any of these linebacker 2s in this group that are actually the linebacker 1s in the fantasy world?
I guess you can say Mack Wilson just because he's wearing the dot in Arizona, but I've seen him play, watched him in Cleveland. An inefficient tackler. He had a tackle rate less than 10% last season, and playing a pretty hefty role even last season. I think he was up over 800 snaps and had a tackle rate of less than 10%. Not something I'm too interested in. And even Devin White, who I'm not really buying either, as the green dot in Vegas. So those are the LB1s, but I don't see that type of production out of those two. But I think with this tier, I think near the end of tier 3, beginning into tier 4, you're kind of getting into that LB dead zone. So by this point, I'm hoping you might have 2 or 3 linebackers from hopefully those first 3 tiers by this point. So because you're kind of entering the dead zone where you're hoping guys are going to play 85 to 90% of the snaps, but maybe in reality, they're probably going to be between 75 and 80, maybe even a little less. I do like McFadden, though. I think he is in line for a larger role within the Giants defense. Been a pretty productive linebacker, so I actually don't mind Micah McFadden within this tier.
Kind of doing the math here, Mac. We're like at linebacker 38 linebackers in before we get to this tier. Are these truly LB4s for our team? Like, are we still kind of?
Yeah, I think you're still getting to the 3 and 4 territory. I think Peyton Wilson is a guy that I really like in this tier.
Jason King's gonna be pretty upset with you that he's this low.
So I wouldn't say low, but he's someone I wrote up as a sleeper. So Peyton Wilson, I think, is someone who could outperform this tier, and someone who I've been able to get as kind of an LB3, LB4. I think he does. I think he looks quicker than Patrick Queen. He does have a full-time role. I think he's pretty decent in zone coverage. I know everybody looks to the play where he got burned by Bucky Irving for a long touchdown. But when you look at the play, he had pretty good coverage on Bucky Irving. It's just he got his arms in a little bit late. He was sticking to him pretty well. Normally, when you match up a running back on a linebacker, it's like 2 steps in a cloud of dust. I don't care who you are. Wilson hung with him. And I think if he looked back and I think if he got his arm up, I think he could have made a play. So I don't think that's the right play to look at him as far as not good coverage. But I do like Peyton Wilson's potential as a sleeper and a potential breakout this year.
I know there's the strategy of handcuffing running backs all the time on the offensive side. Is there any strategy to like handcuffing linebackers? I see a favorite of the shows, Ivan Pace, is here. You know, you mentioned earlier that Cashman sometimes has an injury history.
Yep.
And in that Brian Flores' defense in Minnesota, we see that LB linebacker 1 be super productive. Is
Yep.
Pace the guy that has standalone value, or are you just wanting him as a Cashman handcuff?
I don't mind either, as long as your benches allow for a hand like that. As long as your benches are deep enough to where you can maybe get a handcuff. I don't like to waste a roster spot on something like that, but with Pace, he's an interesting guy because I mean, with 65-70% of the snaps, he's still averaging well over 0.3 points per snap and like a 14-15% tackle rate. He's an ultra productive linebacker. It's just when you're getting 65% of the snaps, 70% of the snaps, what's the word I'm looking for? Your variance is wild. You could have, your floor could be 2 points, and then, you have a ceiling of potentially 17 points. So it's tough to pinpoint and be consistent on a weekly basis, which is why within like when we write waiver wire articles, someone, you've got this guy. Yeah, he scored 17 points. Yeah, dude only played 10 snaps. He got lucky because he scored, he got an interception, he got a forced fumble, returned it for a touchdown. That's not something you can rely on. And that's not, I'll let somebody pick up those highly volatile linebackers. I want to follow the snaps when you look at these producers. With Pace, I have a little bit of hope for Pace, just with what I've seen with Minnesota's defense. They did a little bit more dime, but when I looked at their plays overall, I think they only had 8% single linebacker dime snaps in the preseason. Now, was that just a preseason thing? Or, are they going to go with their normal defense? Or they just not want to show off what they're doing during the preseason into the regular season? So a little bit of, I got a little bit of optimism for Pace. So he is a decent stash if you can get him like as an LB4 or 5. But yeah, I mean, I'd draft him, maybe not necessarily as a Brian Cashman handcuff, but to block the Brian Cashman owner that if something does happen to Cashman, oh, sorry. It's like that episode of Seinfeld when it was the suit episode when the suit went on sale. There was that unadvertised sale. George hides the suit. His competition for that suit walks in. He's looking for the suit. He's like, it was right here. George walks in casually. It's like, oh, look, someone must have hidden the suit. It's right here. So Ivan Pace can be that suit. And, if someone goes looking for him on the waiver wire and sees, oh, he's already gone.
He's already rostered. Yep. I see Christian Elliss on this list, and I know in some formats he's got that D-line eligibility. Is some of his value baked into that here, or is this truly just standalone, the second linebacker in New England?
It's truly standalone. It's truly standalone as the LB2. I'm making the projection or the assumption that he's probably going to play anywhere between 80 to 85% of the snaps. So kind of puts him in an LB3, LB4 territory. As a DL, I mean, I guess he could be a DL3, but I mean, if you're looking at if you've got a DL room of, say, you got like Myles Garrett, Chop Robinson, and Josh Allen, I'm not starting Christian Elliss over any of those three. So it truly is. I'm looking at it from a pure linebacker, and snaps as a linebacker with that potential snap volume.
We've kind of already teased out a little bit here about like the zero linebacker strategy and stuff like that. What are some mistakes maybe IDP managers make when drafting linebackers, maybe in tier 3 or this tier? What's a hiccup that sometimes we have happen?
I don't know. I guess not pivoting due to new information. Like I know at the beginning during the offseason, Akeem Davis-Gaither was a guy that we were liking as a potential 3-down linebacker, full-time linebacker. Well, obviously with Cody Simon, Owen Popo getting some snaps, and the fact that his coverage is really bad, I don't think he has that locked in role. So just learn, just watching the snaps, watching the schemes, and just paying attention to those things and not, making the shift. So like, you had Cedric Gray and James Williams in a position battle. Well, Cedric Gray probably won the LB2 role. It's like, okay, now we've got, I was so locked into James Williams. It's, it's, I guess, having take lock. It's like, okay, you got to almost separate your takes or separate your bias from what's actually going on. With Pete Werner, New Orleans kind of got a little bit of orange flags with New Orleans. Werner only played 73% of the snaps in this last preseason game. They showed off a little bit more dime single linebacker. So, well, crud, you didn't do that in the first two games. What are we doing here? So, yeah, it's just not pivoting to the information that you're given, I guess.
And nothing is truer than that. Like literally, like we said earlier on, how this document has changed. Like we started thinking about the show last week, Friday, started doing some notes for the show. Like literally, I've gotten 4 updates from you about your tier rankings since last week, Friday. And, here it is 4 days later. Like literally it changed like twice today, and one of those teams is the Colts. Like we've seen, Jalen Carlise was this huge, like, sleeper breakout player for a lot of us during like June, July, and all of a sudden, like, we started getting reports like his shoulders bothering him, then his ankle started, and then now it's like Joe Bacci, and then now all of a sudden, Colts today they signed Muma. Is he a name that we're gonna have to like start to worry about here a little bit, maybe creeping in, taking some snaps? Or
see, he's an interesting one. I mean, when you look at his preseason, it wasn't great. So I think at the outset, it's an interesting name that was added for sure. But I think for someone like him, I think he is going to have to play catch up, because now we're about a week away from the season. Schemes have been established. Game plans are installed. Schemes are installed. They've gone through their 3 preseason games. They got their final 53. The 53 that have been there know the scheme. They know the language. They know what they're supposed to do. And then here you have, Chad Muma's coming in. Yeah, I mean, he can contribute, but he is way behind the terminology for the Colts. So I don't necessarily see him getting snaps right away. I look at him more at this point as an LB3, LB4 body, while Jalen Carlise is on IR. I think Lou Anarumo has shown you that he likes Joe Bacci and he's comfortable with him as that LB2 opposite Zaire Franklin. So I don't think anything, at least from my perspective or my assumption, I don't think anything changes at this point. Obviously, come week 1, we could all be Sheldon and throwing our papers up in the air and everything just goes to hell and we're wrong on everything. So, But that's kind of the way I am assessing the Colts situation with them adding Chad Muma today.
Is the LB2 in Indianapolis like a situation you're just kind of like avoiding? Like,
no, I'd take a shot on Joe Bacci just because.
Okay.
I mean, you've got who's behind him, Segun Olubi, and now you got Chad
Cameron
Muma. So exactly. Cameron McGrone. He's kind of that third linebacker in base, so he's probably the one coming off in nickel. So if you're getting Joe Bacci as maybe your LB4, LB5, I mean, you're getting him at a pretty, all he costs you as a roster spot. If you reach for him as an LB2 and passed over guys like Fred Warner and you passed over those guys, then I'm not
That's more than a landmine.
You've
That's a
stepped in
nuke.
yeah, you've definitely stepped in one there. So, but in most instances, hopefully you've gotten your LB4 and LB5, and you got yourself kind of a nice little lottery scratch off.
Trenton season, redemption season?
No, not for me. Especially not with Jay Higgins making the 53 man.
I knew it was either going to be the Carson Schwesinger show or the Jay Higgins show. So I guess we got.
Well, we haven't even mentioned Sean Dolak. We can get into all that too. No,
he's coming up.
With Trenton Simpson. I mean, we saw what happened with him last year. He had the LB2 role, lost it midseason to Malik Harrison and Chris Board. I don't see anything. I don't see anything where that risk doesn't happen again. He had a good preseason last year, had a pretty good preseason this year, but who knows what happens. Jay Higgins is on the roster now, and he cares not for your draft capital, who you are. He just goes and plays football. And I still can't believe that he went undrafted, because Zach Orr says he's a good linebacker, shouldn't have gone undrafted. So if Zach Orr and I are on the same page, then I am more than happy with my evaluation of him.
I've never seen Mike Woellert and Zach Orr in the same room at the same time. So I'm just saying. You didn't mention another linebacker, rookie linebacker there, Teddy Buchanan.
Yes.
Is there any chance that he's the
possibly? I like Buchanan. I like Buchanan, but I don't know. I think I'm a Jay Higgins guy. So I think both of those linebacker guy. I think those two better. Yeah, and I still don't get why the Buccaneers released Nick Jackson. Higgins and Jack. I still don't understand that. But no, Simpson and Buchanan should look over their shoulder. Higgins is a dude. He is a dude.
Yeah. Yeah, those Big Ten guys know how to play football. Flag plant in this tier. Who's your guy you want to walk away with?
What are we still?
And it could be a name that you already mentioned. I know you were pretty high on Wilson in this group.
Are we still in tier 4?
Tier 4. Yep.
Flag plant is probably Peyton Wilson. Although I don't mind Cedric Gray, and I don't mind. I just had him. Peyton Wilson. I don't mind Cedric Gray. Devin Bush is an interesting one. He's got an LB2 spot in Cleveland. They're dealing with injuries, so I have a feeling he's going to have a pretty high snap count. So, but yeah, it's Peyton Wilson, it's Cedric Gray, Bush if you're kind of waiting on the LB position. Oh, and Drew Tranquil. Sorry, Tranquil is another one. Again, an 85% snap guy who can be pretty productive.
So diving in here into tier 5. This is for those of us that play in super deep leagues, deep rosters. Maybe some of these names are starting to get into those dynasty stash kind of ranges. I think this is the tier that might be of the most interest to our listeners, just because we're always on the lookout for that next big thing. We want to look smart. We want to have that breakout guy. So Mike, make us look smart here. Who in this tier are we walking away from our drafts with?
I think it could be Troy Dye. It also could be Nakobe Dean once he comes back. But Troy Dye is an interesting one just because Junior Colson is on IR, going to miss the rest of the season, and we all know Denzel Perriman is not the pinnacle of health. Dye got some pretty good preseason run. But in addition to Troy Dye, I liked what I saw to Marlo Wax, and he made the final 53. And you got a few of these undrafted free agents that are playing some football. And Marlo Wax is one of those guys that can play. So, but I think Troy Dye is someone who can potentially be kind of that guy, that LB2. I know they liked him, and I know they like him in LA. So he's kind of my dark horse. I liked Jack Gibbons, but unfortunately I think he's playing more on the second team. So I think if anything happens injury wise, I definitely think Gibbons is a next man up type of a guy.
So I know that we're in LB or tier 5 here, but obviously with your tiers being bigger than 12, we're kind of in that deep stage. Like these are definitely like deep league ads. There's probably, you're looking at 53-man roster kind of leagues here for some of these names. A name on this list that's kind of like a couple months ago that you wouldn't have thought, Omar Speights. Like, the end of last season, he was kind of like everyone's like pick to be the Ernest Jones replacement. Someone that they don't have a lot of draft capital in, just kind of really fits the MO for the linebacker room there in LA. We see Nate Landman now on the team. He's a higher tier than here. What happened to Speights?
Well, I think Speights is more of the defense. It's typically not a 2 linebacker defense. So if Speights is only going to see 60% of the snaps, that kind of lowers the floor. And like Jay Higgins, Sean Dolak made the 53-man roster, and Sean Dolak, in my amateur eyes, was absolutely the best linebacker on that field in all the games. Just from a pure football standpoint, he just looked like the best linebacker on the field. And again, he's one of those guys. He's an overcomer. Oh, you're not going to invite me to the combine? All right, I'm going to kill it on my pro day. Oh, I went undrafted. All right, well, I'm going to make the 53-man roster. So he seems to have those intangibles. He's an overcomer, and the kid can just play football. So that's probably why I'm not a little bit higher than Speights, because I think Sean Dolak can make an impression this season, maybe a little bit earlier than expected.
We know that everyone's always available for trade, especially on the defensive side. If you're rostering one of these players and another manager comes to you with, like, obviously 2nd round pick, you're slam dunking. 3rd round pick, any of these guys give you a pause if someone offers you a 3rd, or are you smash accepting?
If someone offers me a 3rd round, for who? Any of these guys?
Any of these guys. So if you have any of these guys on your roster, 3rd round pick, like Nakobe Dean might be the only one that might give me some pause. Is there anybody else on that
3rd
list?
round pick for Nakobe Dean? Here you go.
Okay.
Here you go. That's fine with me. But yeah, no, if anybody offers me a 3rd round pick for Troy Dye or Omar Speights here you go. Absolutely.
4th round pick.
Probably, because you probably didn't spend a whole lot on these guys. So 4th round pick, yes. Maybe not on. No, I mean, no, there's no one here that if it's a 4th round pick that I probably wouldn't. I'm probably given the pick. Yep.
Yeah. Johnny's got a famous saying, for the price of a mouse click. And that's probably what you spent on a good number of these players. Like it was just being savvy, working the waiver wires, picked them up, maybe cash in on those players.
Yep.
What a fall from grace Christian Harris has had. Like this time last year, he was kind of him and Azeez Al-Shaair were going to be the guys in Houston, and now there's kind of this muddy mess. We got Henry Two Toes is there. We got EJ Speed is there. Outside of Al-Shaair, like, it's kind of a gross situation, isn't it?
It's very gross. Yeah, it's very gross. I think it is Henry Toto or Two Toes. Someone commented that writing Two Toes is funny. I'm like, well, it's just easier. It's just easier than writing out his name. You got to manipulate your fingers with commas and
I'm not a good
typer. Marks and capitals,
and
I'm just writing out Two Toes. That's his nickname.
Yeah, it sticks. We all know. Last tier here, Mike, tier 6. We've all heard of 0 RB. I don't even know if you can consider these guys 0 LB strategy here. This is true degen territory here for linebackers. I don't even think some of these guys' moms know that they're even on an NFL team. Outside of having a pulse and an NFL uniform, who we want on this list, Mike?
Yeah, if you took no linebackers up to this point, you're probably questioning your entire existence. But
we went in on those leagues if you took no linebackers up to
For me, these are kind of kind of the injury fill-ins. So Danny Stutzman, should anything happen to Demario Davis, Danny Stutzman is the next man up. He's going to fill in for Davis. The Jaguars loved Jack Kaiser, gushed over him. So, he's someone to maybe have as that 6th or 7th linebacker in a deep league should something happen to Oluokun or Devin Lloyd. Again, I know I mentioned Sean Dolak. I mentioned Jay Higgins. Ruben Hippolyte is another one. He's a guy who from what I wrote on him, he is the first linebacker or the first player to get drafted that did not get a combine invite. So, and the 40 that he ran would have ranked number 1 among the linebackers at the combine this year. I think I want to say he ran a sub 440, ran a sub 4.40. So he's got speed, he's got athleticism, looked pretty good in the preseason. TJ Edwards is already dinged up a little bit. I think Noah Sewell is the backup, but so Ruben Hippolyte may be somebody. I think Derek Barnes is somebody that is going to factor in. I think maybe even more so maybe than Anzalone. I mean, they gave him a 2-year extension, so Dan Campbell seems to like him. So, and then of
that
course
was coming off an injury too.
Yeah,
like that was
exactly.
And he's a sneaky name too because he's got that D-line eligibility.
He's got the D-line eligibility too. Yeah. And then you got DeMarvion Overshown coming back from Thanksgiving, which is kind of in the playoffs. But at the same time, when someone's coming back from that late, is what kind of rust are we looking at? Because there's in shape and then there's football shape, which are 2 totally different things. I think EJ Speed is an interesting one just because could be an injury fill-in. I think he surpassed Christian Harris as the LB3. So should something happen to Al-Shaair or Two Toes, I think Speed will probably be that next man up. I know everybody was kind of surprised that his free agent market wasn't great, but when you look at the grades, it's a clear reason why. He had a lot of red. Not a very good tackler, not very good in coverage, wasn't very good in run defense. So those types of things don't get you free agent contracts. But yeah, this tier is ugly. I mean, when I'm writing in Patrick O'Connell, we're really
in the Lucky Charms box.
Yeah, we're really, really diving in. So I wrote up O'Connell just because we didn't know what Tyrese Knight was dealing with, and he got a lot of run during the preseason. So a lot of these guys are going to be kind of your injury fill-ins, next man up type guys.
All right. So, well, that's fantastic that we went through all 6 tiers. We probably, how many players, looking at well over 100 linebackers between all 6 tiers of those players. So we're going to play a little game here, Mike. We're going to play, this is your dynasty team. Okay. So regardless of what round you'd have to draft these linebackers in, we're going to go each tier, and you're going to get to pick one linebacker from each tier you want to build your dynasty team around.
Okay, well, we can just skip to tier 2 just because I think who I'm going to pick in tier 1.
Well,
what you want me to say?
You haven't had an opportunity to talk about Schwesinger yet, and I know that you have a slight obsession with the young man from UCLA. So here you go. Why is Carson Schwesinger your guy in tier 1?
Yeah, I mean,
or is he?
No, tier 1. I am taking Carson Schwesinger. 22, 23 lands in what is now probably the perfect landing spot in Cleveland. Green dot, 100% of the snaps. Is light years ahead of his development. Jim Schwartz has already said this kid is unlike anything that I've ever seen. If he makes a mistake, it doesn't happen again. I don't need to tell him. He's already called him one of his favorite players he's ever coached, which is high praise from Jim Schwartz, who is a hard ass. So Carson Schwesinger, I am tier 1. That's who I'm building around. High tackle rate, high tackle volume. He's an engineer. He's smart. And just everything that I've seen so far, just he is as advertised.
And he's really learning the position yet, because didn't he only play he only transferred to UCLA for 1 season to play linebacker?
Yeah, last year was the first year as a starter. Yeah. Even his first year as a starter, played 700 snaps, wore the dot for UCLA, and called the plays. So, I mean, he must his processing and his ability to pick things up must be on a whole nother level.
I know you had joked about him being the second coming of Luke Kuechly, and I know we all know how much you like Kuechly, so that's some pretty high praise from you. So
just yeah, and I'm not even talking about from production standpoint, just the way he handles himself, the way he has commanded the defense, the way he seems to know what's coming. It just I mean, I hate to put I know I hate to that's a lot of praise, it's a lot of high expectations, but that's just what I see right now, which is I know it's pretty crazy to think about.
Dynasty draft, where are you taking Schwesinger? How early?
I guess it depends on where I am in the draft. If end of first, maybe beginning of the second.
Okay.
It depends kind of how comfortable I am with, I guess, my position players and what I'm doing. So, but that's probably where you're probably going to have to start taking him. Is the second round if you want him? That's where you're going to have to take him.
When Jordan Hicks retired, Schwesinger became this instant spike in value in those D-up drafts because he was kind of going undrafted. Yeah. And then as soon as Hicks retired, all of a sudden his name was fourth round. He started sneaking into the third, and I know that those drafts filled up super quick. And had we had more drafts later in August, it would have been interesting to see how high in drafts he actually would have went.
I think he probably would have been a third rounder. Okay. Maybe second.
All right. Moving into the second tier, Mike, who's a linebacker in your dynasty team you want to walk away from? Who are you building with?
Oh, see, this is kind of a yuck tier for dynasty because you got a lot of guys who are in their late 20s. But I'm probably going to go Jack Sanborn.
Mid to late 20s.
I do too. I'm probably going Jack Sanborn though here.
So you bring up an interesting question or comment there, Mike, with the dynasty piece. How far into the future are you worried about age? If you had a Schwesinger and Fred Warner as your LB2 or your second linebacker there, are you worried? Because Warner's probably going to play 2-3 more years of solid production. Are you worried about production beyond a 3-year window or no?
No, he's I think one of those guys where if he's on my roster, I'm probably just going to ride him out. Unless you come at me with obviously come out with a treasure trove of picks. Schwesinger, you're going to have to offer me your deed to your house, and you're going to have to continue to pay the mortgage on it. I'm not paying
those prices come down then from the last time.
Yes, come down a little bit.
All right, so we got Schwesinger and Sanborn here.
Yep.
Anybody else that's kind of tempting to you here in tier 2?
I don't mind Terrel Dodson. 27, so kind of still entering his prime. So probably Dodson and Sanborn, probably the guys, and maybe even Warner. I know Warner is going to be 28. But probably those three are probably my targets.
Okay. Moving on to tier 3, who you got as far as the linebacker to help build your dynasty team around?
This one's interesting. I'm probably it's probably either Demetrius Knight or D Winters. Demetrius Knight, he's got a contract. D Winters, I don't know what he's at right now. I don't know if he's got 1 year left, 2 years left. And then probably Tyrese Knight, youthful, probably has a 3-down role. So probably those three. I mean, I hate to be a cop out, but probably Tyrese Knight, Demetrius Knight, and Winters. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Tier 4, who you want to walk away with?
Peyton Wilson. That's probably pretty easy. And I mean, I think you do have to say Jihad Campbell. But I'm probably walking away. I'd want to walk away with Campbell or Wilson.
Probably not going to be able to get Campbell as a LB4. You're going to have to pay up for him too. So
yeah.
I know that you obviously Schwesinger's late first round here, early second for you. Is Campbell close? in the dynasty, or is he a little bit further back?
He's a little bit further back. He's going earlier than I want. He's usually that first linebacker taken. So he's not someone he's not someone that I've really sought out for some reason, not someone I've really sought after or targeted. So is that going to bite me? Maybe, but yeah, that's just, he's almost like he's a good player, but I guess he's better than Jalen Walker, but he's almost my Jalen Walker for the linebacker position.
Tier 5, who you want to walk away with?
Tier 5, probably Cody Simon. I really like Cody Simon coming out. I think I want to say he was my LB5 or LB6. No, he's definitely my LB6 because I think I had Dolak as my 5. But probably Cody Simon. I like his upside. I think he's somebody who has a good path to snaps. It's not a very talented linebacker group in Arizona, so it's probably going to be Cody Simon.
And in tier 6, I know you'd probably want to trade your tier 2 linebacker to pick out 3 of these guys, but you can only pick 1.
What are we in 5 or 6?
We are in 6. We're in 6 now.
But 6, I'm picking Dolak. 6, I'm picking Dolak.
Okay.
Yeah. Not even a question.
Not even a question? Okay.
Not even a question.
All right. So, Mike, I know that you put in, a 2-hour grind with Macri last week doing that show. We're closing in on 90 minutes here.
Yep.
Is there anything, like you mentioned, we're a week away from the start of the NFL season. Is there anything from a linebacker perspective from this episode before we wrap up that you want the good listeners to know about what to come or what's ahead?
Just for linebackers, keep an eye on the tiers and my Green Dot article as news comes out, as information changes. Those are going to be updated. Follow me on Twitter. I update those things as news comes out. So just be prepared to pivot and be prepared for anything to happen. That's all I got to say. We're a week out, and if your stud puts up 2 tackles in week 1, don't drop him. Just don't do it. Don't.
Yeah, it usually takes about week 4 to kind of figure out what we really got.
Yep.
In the season. So, don't panic drop like Mike said. Don't panic trade. That's the worst thing you can do. Yep. Mike, what are you going to be doing for the IDP show this in season? What can we expect from you on a weekly basis?
Yeah, you'll have my Green Dot article on Mondays, weekly projections throughout the week. That's what I will be doing for IDP show.
Fantastic. Well, Mike, I appreciate your effort all season long answering questions. Love the in-game analysis with all the clips from all 22. Just awesome to see all the tweets from every single game, like literally pictures of little green stickers is heartwarming. So.
it is that time. It is that time of year.
Yep, for sure. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the IDP After Show. Again, I want to thank Mike for coming on, grinding out another linebacker episode. I know he doesn't get tired talking about it, but it sometimes can be a grind for sure. So next week, we're going to be starting our weekly preview episodes where we're going to be breaking down each game from an IDP perspective and some IDP players you're going to want to know before setting your lineups for the week ahead. Cole Hagan and I are going to be kicking that off, so I appreciate that. Mike, thank you again for joining me. Thank you for the listeners for joining us as well. If you aren't doing so already, please make sure you hit that like, subscribe, and notification button so you never miss an episode of the IDP show or the IDP After Show. Until next time, we say thank you, and kickoff is just a week away.
Enjoy, everybody.
This was the IDP After Show.